umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei ma tov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei ma tov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei ma tov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. How good it is,
How good it is,
how sweet it is,
how sweet it is
to be together on this day. How good it is,
how good it is,
how sweet it is,
how sweet it is
to be together on this day. Hinei ma tov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei ma tov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. It's so wonderful to have you here on our campus. A little bit hot out there, Andrew, a touch warm in Southern California. So we have moved inside. Thank you to everybody who's joining us from home, from all over the world. We're so grateful to you for being part of the Stephen Wise Temple Shabbat experience. It's just great to be together. It's an honor to invite Carol Green to come and light our Shabbat candles. And if you're joining from home, why don't you light your Shabbat candles right along with us as we bring in the joy and the beauty, the light and the warmth of Shabbat.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Shabbat Shalom. We continue with the beautiful poem, Shabbat HaMalkah. You can find it in your prayer book on page 10.
Hachama merosh ha'ilanot nistalka Bo v'netzeh likrat Shabbat HaMalkah Hine hi yoredet hakdosha habrucha Ve'ima malchim tzeva shalom umenucha Boi hamalkah Boi hakala Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaShalom.
Such a beautiful setting and such a beautiful, beautiful text from the great poet Bialik. And it's an invitation to us, and he's playing with tradition. He uses a phrase from Shalom Aleichem, and he's using imagery that we find in our tradition. But I love that refrain, boi, boi, and that means come, come. We're inviting Shabbat into our lives, into our hearts, but there's something we need to do to make that happen. And for all of you who are here and all of you who are joining us online, you're doing that. You're making Shabbat. You're asking the bride to come to you, but you're meeting her maybe even more than halfway. So thank you for making that effort. And it's a gift we give ourselves, and it's a gift we give our community as well. We'll continue with that image of Shabbat as a bride. You can find it on page 20 with Lecha Dodi, another great poem. This one's several hundred years older than the Bialik poem, but this is that poem that invites us to think about the romance of Shabbat. It's a love story between God and the Jewish people, and then there's this added element of time. We set apart one day in 7 for rest, renewal, study, and reflection.
Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekavela lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekavela shamor v'zachor b'ribor Ateret bala besimcha uvtzala toch emunei am segula boi chala lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekavela lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekavela.
Turn to page 28. Remain standing for our call to worship. In this setting, invites us to wake up. We're awake, but it invites us to wake up spiritually as we get ready to enter into the heart of our service. And in this month of Elul, as we're getting closer and closer to Rosh Hashanah, we think about the call of the shofar, which is asking us to wake up, look inside ourselves, and try to be the people we're meant to be.
Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? Ya la 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 la, 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 ya la 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 la. Barechu et Adonai. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed Le'olam Va'ed Yalalai lai lai Yalalai lai lai Yalalai lai lai Yalalai lai lai Yalalai
middle of page 31. In the English there, feel free to join with me. This is an hour of change. Within it, we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? Baruch atah Adonai Hama'ariv Aravim.
Amen.
On page 34, Shema Yisrael, this big idea of Judaism that there's a unity to creation. We're all connected, all humanity, all the planets in our solar system, the galaxies are all part of one vast universe fashioned by the one God.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed.
The Michamocha is on page 40. Sometimes, perhaps, we forget as we read our prayers just how old they are, and we perhaps don't recognize that we're reading words written in centuries and times where the meaning was very different from our own, but yet we read them as if they were written for us today. And it's the nature of our tradition, and what perhaps is the secret to our existence for all eternity, is that we read those ancient words and we find meaning in them in our lives, and they have shaped us even to get to the point we are today. I tell you that as a bit of a hint for what's going to come later when I share my longer words that are connected to the Michamocha. So hold on to that thought as we sing the Michamocha.
Lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai, lai 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 lai, lai 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 lai. Michamocha ba'elim Adonai, Michamocha Netar b'kodesh nora, tehilot oseh Fele Nora Tehilot Hosei Fele Bihamocha Ba'elim Adonai Bihamocha Nedar B'Kodesh Adonai Yimloch Le'olam Va'ed Adonai Yimloch Le'olam Va'ed Lai Lai Yai Lai 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 Yai Lai 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 Yai Lai Yai Lai 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 Yai Lai 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 Lai.
The Shomer was on page 44, also words from the Torah. Almost as soon as the Israelites found their way to freedom, there was a gift given to them. It was the gift of Shabbat. So it wasn't enough to have freedom from slavery, but also to have freedom from servitude 7 days a week to anyone, not just God, but also to a human being. And so this gift of Shabbat, the gift of, as Rabbi Yoshi said, of study, of rest, of peace, was the ultimate culmination of the passage to freedom.
V'shameru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat לדורותם ברית עולם, ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם, ברית עולם.
The Misha Berach is on page 253. Perhaps what we missed most of our seclusion over the past several years was our inability to put our hands, our shoulders to shoulders, our hands on each other, because what we know is in a certain kind of a touch, there is healing. And so we recite these words of the Misha Berach, and we encourage you to think thoughts and hold in your hearts those dear ones who are ill. But when you see them, go to them, hug them, put a hand on their shoulder. Not only let them know that you sang this prayer for them, but also let them feel the presence of your warmth, because that in itself is healing. Misha Berach.
Misha Berach Avotenu Mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Bekor habracha le'avoteinu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
As I watched you put your hands on each other in healing, it was a moving moment. So thank you for sharing in that thought and for reaching out to each other and bringing those healing touches. We continue with the Amidah on page 48. It continues through to page 62. We have an opportunity for personal, private prayer. You can read the words on either page as you flip through, or you can just close your eyes and think your own thoughts. I ask you to rise, and when you're finished, you can sit down.
Into darkness I fall. Do you hear my call? So much that I fear. I need you near. Kavel Adonai, Kavel Adonai, Kavel Adonai.
Oh, please hear our call. Have mercy on us all. Oh, please hear our call. Have mercy on us all. Kavel Adonai, Kavel Adonai, Kavel Adonai.
We hope, we pray, Adonai, show us the way. We hope, we pray, Adonai, show us the way. Kaveh el Adonai, Kaveh el Adonai, Kaveh el Adonai. We sing our song.
Our hearts are strong.
We sing our song.
Our hearts are strong.
We sing our song.
Our hearts are strong. We hope, we hope, we hope, we hope we will.
Adonai.
We hope, we hope, we hope, we hope we will.
Adonai.
We hope, we hope, we hope, we hope we will. We hope, we hope, we hope, we hope we will. We hope, we hope, we hope, we hope we will.
Adonai.
We hope, we hope, we hope, we hope we will.
Adonai.
We hope, we hope, we hope, we hope we will.
Adonai. In the darkness of the night, together we bring the light.
Every year, our elementary school kids have a theme, and the theme often has a song that goes along with it. So that, what you just heard, was the song that went along with the theme, Kaveh Adonai, hope in God. So we've been singing it for the past couple of weeks with Tali playing on the piano, and as beautiful as it was tonight with these wonderful voices singing it, it's particularly beautiful when they're little kids singing it with all their hearts, and they ring out, and you just hear it fill up. We're doing services in Katz these days, so you hear it ring out in Katz Pavilion. It's an inspirational song, a beautiful song. You know, there are times that I just don't want to go to the grocery store. I mean, it's so much work. I have to get in my car, find a parking spot. I have to worry about getting those reusable bags out of the car. I always help them pack the grocery bag, so I have to worry about lining up the groceries correctly. Then I have to schlep it down to the car, and then I have to schlep it out of the car, and then I have to unpack the groceries. Wednesday's my day off. It's grocery shopping day, and my wife's not around. And unpacking them, oy, poor me, right? Poor me. I can tell you're feeling sorry for me. Because, of course, my labor pales in comparison to the folks who have to pick the strawberries, pick the lettuce, pick the blueberries, make sure the fresh fruit gets to the store so that I can bruise it up in my car on the way home, put into those hygienic clamshells that are so beautifully displayed in the grocery store. Dozens and dozens of hardworking hands that make it possible for me to get that fruit into my house. How often do you stop and think about them? How often when you pick the blueberries off the shelf at the grocery store, do you think about the person who reached down to pull those blueberries off the bush? Fruit pickers and packers and garment workers and factory laborers all abound, and truckers and maintenance workers, all the people who do the hard work to make our lives possible. This Monday, it's Labor Day, and it is so much more than just the last long weekend of summer. It's really a time for us to stop and recognize, be grateful for, and most importantly, ensure the well-being of all those whose labor makes our lives possible. And doing it here and now, not just because Monday is Labor Day, although that's a good reason, but also because of all the holidays, I think, of all the secular holidays in the year, I actually think Labor Day is the most Jewish. So let me tell you why, because I think in it reflects some of the core of Jewish values. So like most Jewish values, its origins derive from the Torah. It's our foundational story, as I hinted at earlier. The Micha captures that story of the Exodus from Egypt, but what was it all about? It was about a liberation from unjust servitude. That's the Exodus from Egypt. God's salvation ended our forced labor. Now, we could have told our national origin story any number of ways. It could have been about riches, it could have been about kings, it could have been about just about the land. We could have left out that part. Instead, our national origin story begins with, we were slaves. We were forced laborers. And God's redemption, the Shamru, ends in a day of rest that's given to all. So it's no surprise then that the Torah is filled with laws about how to treat the laborer. Now, it's a product of its time, so it did allow slavery, but it's highly regulated. So women taken in war had to be treated with dignity. This in a world where that didn't happen. The Israelite indentured servants who fell into slavery because of their debt had to be offered freedom after 7 years. And a principle I think that remains even meaningful today, the laborer had to be paid their wages when they completed their work. They couldn't even wait until morning to be paid. And of course, the core of Shabbat is that all laborers get a day of rest. Our ancestors saw labor as a virtue. Kohelet, or Ecclesiastes, wrote in about 450 BCE or so that a worker's sleep is sweet, whether he has much or little to eat. And the sage Ben Sirach, writing in about 200 BCE, declared, "Hate not laborious work or animal husbandry, for it was ordained by God." The Talmud, about 500 CE, went on to declare that the one who enjoys the work of their hands is greater than the one who fears heaven. And this from rabbis, who are not necessarily known as being laborers. Let's be clear about that. Now, of course, to be honest and full disclosure, there are also examples of rabbis lamenting the fact that labor pulled people away from Torah study. We still say that. Your jobs take you away from Torah study. Wouldn't you run more often? The Jews were laborers during the Middle Ages is actually captured in our names. My wife's name, Sobelman, Taylor, Fingerhut, also seems to be derived from Taylor. Ackerman, Feldman, farmers. Appleman, fruit workers, fruit growers. Drucker, a printer. Fabricant, manufacturer. Glasser. Schneiderman, absolutely. Glasser, I don't need to tell you what Glasser is. You know what that is. Goldschmidt, Goldberg, Goldstein. Perhaps all goldsmiths. Not all of us were moneylenders. But you get the point. Many of our names. You added one to my list as well. And there are rabbinic dictums from the 17th century up until our time that support workers' rights to organize. And they derive, many of them, from this particular passage in the Talmud, where our ancestors wrote, "The residents of a community are entitled to establish the community's units of measure, the price of commodities, and the wages paid to workers. They're also entitled to punish those who violate those rules." That was written 1,500 years ago. We can't leave out the return to the land of Israel, because one of the core Zionist dreams was of Jews laboring with their hands in the Holy Land, not only to rebuild that land, but also because of the purity, the physicality of labor. Israel's first political party and most powerful through 1977 was Labor Party, right, Mapai. It reflected the labor socialism of Israel's founders and their glorification of labor, of common labor. And how many of us travelers to Israel came back with that goofy hat called a kova tembel, right? What was that about? Well, that was a symbol of the agricultural laborer. It was a symbol of virtue. In the 19th and the 20th centuries, as more and more Jewish workers immigrated to the U.S., we found common cause with the American labor movement. It was Jews who organized the United Garment Workers of America, the International Ladies Garment Workers. And of course, we all learned about him in junior high or high school, Samuel Gompers, a Jew who was involved in the establishment of the American Federation of Labor and was its president for 30 years. In 1900, Jews founded Der Arbeiterring, the Workers' Circle, Yiddish was the lingua franca of that organization, but it was all about the workers speaking Yiddish to each other, even as they practiced their somewhat secularized, socialized Judaism. So this is not going to surprise you. In 1973, down the street, Leo Beck Temple had a rally for the United Farm Workers where they brought in Cesar Chavez to speak. But what some of you old-timers might know if you've been here for a long time is Cesar Chavez also spoke from this bima. Now, it was not without controversy. Rabbi Hershey, you were there, right? You remember those days. And Rabbi Zeldin was never one to shy away from that controversy, and you can bet that he was well aware of the historical significance of the Jewish connection to labor. Now, over the last several decades, we've witnessed a diminution in the role of organized labor and the strength of organized labor. And both political parties, ironically, though expressing solidarity with America's laborers, haven't exactly passed legislation that was in their favor. Because in truth, there's always been ambivalence to the plight of the laborer in Jewish communities. Whether it was the factory owners, like my grandparents and my father, who didn't necessarily want unions and strikes in their places of business, or the other side, those in pursuit of economic justice who said labor unions are the only viable path toward achieving true economic justice for the laborers. So our relationship is, like most things in Jewish life, complicated. The tension continues even today. There's a United Farm Workers bill that heads to Governor Newsom's desk. It would allow farm workers to vote by mail in union elections. Many in the California Legislative Jewish Caucus actually support it. In fact, it was written by Scott Wiener and Henry Stern, no relation, but they're both co-authors. And of course, many others in the same caucus don't support it, and it's likely to be vetoed by the governor. So regardless of where you stand in your support or opposition to labor unions, the truth is that in 1894, this country established the first Monday in September as our collective time to appreciate the laborers in our country. And now, recognizing our storied history, our Jewish community's relationship with those who labor with the sweat of their brows and the work of their hands, here's what I hope. I hope you'll take a little more time to appreciate those whose hard work enriches our lives. Because Labor Day really is more than just the last long weekend of summer. In many ways, it is a Jewish holy day. Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi Stern. I also just want to remind people, Rabbi Stern mentioned our own Rabbi Zeldin of blessed memory, but our namesake of our congregation, Rabbi Stephen Wise, when he served a community in Portland, Oregon, he was a real leader in fighting against practices that took advantage of child labor, and he worked alongside leaders of that day to try to improve conditions for laborers. So there's a connection there as well. And certainly from the perspective of our tradition, prayer, avodah is a name of prayer, but it also means work, and we're supposed to serve God, and thinking about ways we can serve others in their service is a beautiful and holy act. So thank you for that important reminder. We're going to turn in our prayer book to a prayer for our nation. You can find that on page 258. Page 258. And invite you to join with me and think about the way that these words can help us to be God's partners, as it were, in making our nation a better place for everybody, for all those who labor on our behalf, for ourselves in the way that we help others. Let's read these words together at the bottom of the page. O guardian of life and liberty, may our nation always merit your protection. Teach us to give thanks for what we have by sharing it with those who are in need. Keep our eyes open to the wonders of creation and alert to the care of the earth. May we never be lazy in the work of peace. May we honor those who've died in defense of our ideals. Grant our leaders wisdom and forbearance. May they govern with justice and compassion. Help us all to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways that we may serve you. May our homes be safe from affliction and strife, and our country be sound in body and spirit. And let us say Amen. And on the following page 259, a prayer for Medinat Yisrael, a prayer for our homeland, the state of Israel.
שבשמיים, צור ישראל וגואלו, ברך את מדינת ישראל, ראשית צמיחת גאולתנו.
O Heavenly One, protector and redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath the wings of your love, spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with your good counsel. Establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who dwell there. And we say, Amen.
Avinu shebashamayim, tzor Yisrael v'goalo. Amen. Selah. Amen. Selah.
It's an honor to invite to the Bima Rabbi Eli Hersher. Rabbi Hersher, 10 years ago, you brought me here, and I'm thankful to you for that and many other gifts that you shared with us. And we as a congregation are overjoyed to see you, and you're going to share some joy tonight. So thank you for being here.
Joy. Thank you, Yoshi. Yes, great joy. There's a family present in the congregation tonight that is about to celebrate a simcha, and I guess this is a simcha in and of itself. Larry and Ginny Gottlieb have been part of this congregation. I remember when you first came to LA and joined us, and remember all of the times that we studied and learned and worshiped together, and all of those years are a great blessing. Their children, Shauna's here, Kenny's here, and Rebecca is here, together with David Sherman. Please come up to the Bima, who they're getting married next Friday morning. And it is a joy to offer a blessing. Yep, the mask can come off when you come up on the Bima. Just don't, you can breathe on each other, actually. Rebecca and her brother and sister literally grew up in this congregation. Eternal God who blesses us, we are made in your image. We live in your world to work and to create, to love, to be loved, to create meaning, and to rejoice, and to share ourselves with those we love. As Rebecca and David approach their wedding day, grant that they may find the fullest measure of joy and satisfaction in your world. Bless them, O God, that they may in turn be a blessing to all they meet on life's way. Rebecca and David, in these among all things may you be blessed. In loving each other, in sharing your lives with one another, in appreciating the ways in which you are alike, and in treasuring the ways in which you are different. May you be blessed in peace and serenity in your home, in the blessing of a family, in the fulfillment of living and growing and achieving together. May you be blessed in the warmth and companionship of family and friends and loving community, and in realizing your loftiest aspirations, your fondest hopes, and your most cherished dreams. And to all of this, I'll ask the congregation to say, Amen, and Mazel Tov.
Simmin tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, simmin tov, simmin tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, simmin tov, simmin tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, simmin tov. Yehelanu, 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 ulechol Yisrael.
invite you to turn to page 5 in your prayer books, and those of you joining from home, if you have a glass of wine handy, and you should have a glass of wine or grape juice handy on Friday nights, and really at all times, we are going to raise a glass not just to this wonderful couple, but we think of all the joyous moments in our lives. Anybody here have a birthday this week? If so, please, Karen, have us stand on up. Stand up, because we're all going to end up standing up. Who else has something, maybe an anniversary, something happy, new job? Anniversary? Happy, how many years? 64 years of bliss, and to many more. And we have a couple getting married in just a month, so maybe you can stand up because you've got a simcha coming up. And those of you at home, if you want to put your simchas in the chat, we'd love to join with you. Let's all rise as we're able and raise a glass and remind ourselves that there's lots and lots and lots to rejoice over and lots of sweetness in this world.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava u'ratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reshit ki hu yom techila lemikra'e kodesh zecher yitziat Mitzrayim kivanu v'acharta v'otanu kidashta mikol amim v'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat
L'chaim. Can be seated, please. We turn to page 289 for a reflection before Kaddish Yatom. The light of life is a finite flame. Like the Shabbat candles, life is kindled, it burns, it glows, it is radiant with warmth and beauty, but soon it fades. Its substance is consumed, and it is no more. In light we see, in light we are seen. The flames dance and our lives are full, but as night follows day, the candle of our life burns down and gutters. There is an end to the flames. We see no more and are no more seen. Yet we do not despair, for we are more than a memory slowly fading into the darkness. With our lives, we give life. Something of us can never die. We move in the eternal cycle of darkness and death, of light and life. The words of our Mourner's Kaddish prayer can be found on page 294. And I want to invite you, if you're in the first 7 days or 30 days of mourning, Shiva or Shloshim, to please rise. And feel free to put the name of a loved one in the chat if you're joining from home. If this is the first year of mourning the loss of a loved one, please rise. And if this Shabbat marks the yard site, the anniversary of the death of a loved one, please rise. Let's all stand together in solidarity with our community and with the mourners as we say these words, giving thanks to God for the gift of life itself. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'vyomechon u'v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'bizman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mivarach le'alam u'lamei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudusha barichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran be'alma v'imru Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya, V'chayim Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'mromav, Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. May the one who makes peace in the high places make peace for us here on earth, for us and for all Israel and for all humanity. Let us say Amen. You can be seated. My gratitude to Rabbi Stern for his words of Torah, to our cantorial intern, Andrew Pascal, for your beautiful singing and your davening. And thank you so much to Tali Tadmor, our director of music, and Jeffrey Stern, our percussionist, to the entire crew that helps make these Shabbatot possible. Those of you who are enjoying these services from home, you have all of them to thank, all the people who work so hard behind the scenes. And on Monday, they're going to get a day off because they deserve one, as we all do. And let's celebrate all that hard work that goes into all the things that we, as Rabbi Ron suggested, too often take for granted. We'll conclude with words of Oseh Shalom, those last words of our Amidah prayer that ask God, the one who makes peace in the high places, to make peace for us. And just like that invitation we had early in the service, I was talking about the invitation to Shabbat, the Malkah, come closer Shabbat, but there's a reminder that we have to do something. We have to meet Shabbat at least halfway if we're going to make this experience one of blessing and peace. And the same is true when it comes to making shalom. God is Oseh Shalom, but we can be God's partners in that sacred task. So let's think this weekend and always about how we can do a better job of actively bringing shalom, wholeness, and peace into the world. Join with us.
Oseh Shalom, Shalom bimromav, Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Ve'al Kol Yoshvei Tevel. Say shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel. Oseh shalom, shalom bimromav, Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom bimromav, Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, Oseh Shalom, Shalom bimromav, Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, Oseh Shalom, Shalom bimromav, Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, Oseh Shalom, Shalom bimromav, Yaseh Shalom Aleinu.
Shabbat Shalom.